Hey everybody, Mike Toy Bonsai Boise. Today I'm going to do this video on my Siberian Elm Forest, and I'm going to show some clips from about 5 years ago and then all the way up through just about a week ago when I trimmed it up. So I'll show you how it was created, some of the ups and downs it went through, and what brought us to where we're at now. Let's take a look. So here's how it started about 5 years ago, April of 2019. I dug this up kind of in the crack of a sidewalk, really. This was the main tree, which I still have. I've taken many cuttings from it. But this was the first real hard prune that I did. All these little prunes here that you're seeing, I stuck them in pots, and here it is a few months later. Almost 3 months later. So some of them did take root, and I had so many of them that I decided to make a forest. So in hindsight, I really could have done this better, but it was my first attempt. The pot was pretty big, and most of these cuttings were just so new. I mean, they were, I just took the cuttings 3 months prior, so typically you need more time than that, which I learned the hard way, you're about to see. But still, it was a fun project, and it did amount to something. So it wasn't all in vain. So I had to stick a lot of rocks in there to kind of hold them up. Didn't have a very good plan going into it. And as you can see, that pot is really big. And that's how it looked. So that was the end of June 2019, about 5 years ago. So here it is the following year. So only 3 out of the 9 cuttings survived, which makes the pot look even more ridiculously big. So 3 out of 9 survived, but the 3 that survived look pretty good. Or they're getting there at least. They're still small. But they're healthy and they're growing. So this was September of 2020. Here it is the following summer, July of 2021. Look, I've got a little presentation stick and everything. No PowerPoints, I promise. But as you can see, the trees are starting to take on some personality. They look better than they did before. They're not just little sticks, little tiny cuttings. They're still pretty young, relatively speaking, and kind of thin. But they're getting there. They're getting some shape and some structure, and they have good potential. So at this point now, they've been in this pot about 2 years. And then skip a couple years, here it is in April of 2023, so this was just last spring. I got the 3 remaining trees along with some other random cuttings that I had, and wanted to pot them up in this concrete pot that I made. This was my first concrete pot I ever made. I was so proud of this ugly thing. It was so heavy. But I thought, hey, it's solid, it's made of concrete, it's heavy. It'll withstand anything. But wait till you see what happens to it. But the trees, if you're wondering why some of the smaller trees have leaves at this stage and the bigger ones in the pot do not, the bigger ones came from outside, and the smaller ones were just cuttings that I had had in the grow tent over the winter. You can see in the winter and emerging out of winter, the bark is a lot different colored. It's got this kind of almost shiny, but just a really silvery gray type bark. Looks really cool. I really love Siberian elms for just a ton of reasons. They make great bonsai. They get a bad rap out there because, you know, they're sort of an invasive tree. They grow like weeds. But that makes them pretty resilient, though, too. They are the one type of elm that is resistant to Dutch elm disease. Actually, you might want to fact check that. There could be other types. It's the only one I know of, though, that is resistant to Dutch elm disease. So this is just kind of a quick buzz through as I was putting it together, kind of repositioning them and taking a little more care. So there it is, along with some random cuttings. Ironically, when it went outside, the small cuttings with leaves were so used to being in the grow tent that, you know, the outside conditions just shocked them. All the leaves fell off. I think at least one of them might have died, maybe two. But the outside ones just burst into growth. But the other reason that I love Siberian elms, as I digress, is that if you can tell there that they're very twiggy. The ramification on these things is just amazing. They grow really well. They respond well to hard pruning. They're really resilient. They root easily from cuttings. They have very small leaves. They're just cool. So here it is in July of 2023, so last summer. At some point, and this video is actually from an early stage of it, they did get sick of some type. It's not Dutch elm disease. I looked into that. That was my worry. And that's how I found out that they're resistant to it. But if I zoom in here, hopefully, a lot of the leaves started to turn yellow and they got these brown spots on them. You can kind of see them back there. It's a little hard to see. Hopefully I get a better shot. But it happened to all of my Siberian elms. And I got real worried there for a while. For a little bit, it was the majority of the leaves were doing this. And it was like no stopping it. Whatever it was just no stopping it. But eventually, whatever it was, they all kind of recovered at the same time and bounced back. So, not sure what that was about. Oh, I will point out, I do remember now, the cuttings didn't get it. They weren't affected by it. Weird. So, my awesome concrete pot that I made, my first one, this was taken in March, just a few months ago. I went to check on them, and lo and behold, the pot had cracked. And not just cracked, but cracked on every side. And I mean every side. It was like one sneeze away from just shattering. So I have this plastic training pot. I really wasn't planning on repotting it that day, but didn't have much of a choice. I trimmed them up, sort of cleaned up the situation as best that I could, and tried to figure out how to repot this thing. I did most of it off camera, honestly. This was more of just like a maintenance job, but I took a few clips along the way. So as you can see, it rooted together. It's one big mat of roots. That's just after 1 year. I just potted it into that April of 23. So that's a good sign. They're healthy. And it gave me another chance to reposition them a little bit more. There it is, once I got it all potted up in its new plastic training pot. And there's the remains of my concrete pot that I was so proud of. There it was, got it positioned up. Got the biggest tree right in the middle. A couple of supporting trees and some smaller trees, either behind or in front. I haven't decided yet, honestly. See that little guy? That's tree number 7. For whatever reason, I know you always want an odd number of trees in your forest. And I had 6 trees, so I had to go scratch up a 7th one as a cutting somewhere. So number 7 saves the day. As you can see, it's budding out, looking good and healthy. Healthier than last year even. If you remember, the clip a few minutes ago was in April and it hadn't budded out at all yet. So all in all, there's just a little progress update from a couple weeks after that, just to show that it, survived the transplant and is doing well. I'm actually glad that I did it. I didn't want to have to do it. Definitely didn't want the pot to crack the way it did, but I like the way it looks now better. And here it is as of now. So you can see it's grown out quite a bit. I mean, that's a lot of growth. For only being mid-May, that's a lot of growth. I haven't really had to trim many trees yet until these. So, super healthy. Something that I'll point out to kind of watch out for is reverse taper is a real issue. It is one downside to these. They get reverse taper super quick before you know it. And the reason is that they just pop growth out of everywhere. Cuts, especially anywhere you make a big prune, you'll get 5, 6, 7 shoots coming out of that cut. Right in the elbow of branches, you'll get new branches, and I mean strong growth too, that will take over. And so it doesn't take long for that branch number 3 or 4 at that one little elbow spot to bulge up some growth right there, so that you end up with reverse taper. My main Siberian elm, which I'll do another video on probably in the coming weeks, that one is suffering from reverse taper big time. So it can happen quick, and it's much harder to fix than it is to prevent. So you kind of want to stay on top of these if you can, just to avoid that issue. The pruning method that I do on Siberian elms mostly is just a clip and grow. I just go through, take all the branches down to 1 or 2 nodes. You can see right now they're probably 8 or 9 or 10 nodes long each shoot. I take it down to 1 or 2 depending on which direction I want that branch to go. And I just do that all throughout. You can get lost quickly in these things. You stay hyper focused on an area while you're kind of trimming away, and then the next thing you know, you stop and take a step back and look at it and realize that maybe you need to go a little harder or softer in one area or another. So just a friendly reminder for what it's worth. You can get lost quick in these things. I do it every time for some reason. I may end up adding some cuttings to this at some point. I'm not sure. I'm happy with it right now, really. I mean, maybe it could stand to be a little bit denser, the forest, a few extra trees in there. But I'm also fine if not. I kind of like the way that it's going, and if it's not broke, why fix it? So there it is after it's trim. So you got to see the birth and creation of it, and its ups and downs all the way up to this point. So hope you liked it. Appreciate you watching. Please like and subscribe, and have a good rest of your day.